Welcome. My name's Carol Cohen, and I and my three colleagues are going to be with you for the next half hour or so, talking about the time for group work. We do know that this is indeed the time, especially when it comes to the People's Summit and leaving no one behind. So before we go any further into this, I'd like to share with you who that will share our experiences. And I'd like, even though there are four of us here doing the talking, we want you to think about what are the themes emerging for our discussion and what opportunities and challenges appear to you in terms of some of the things that we're talking about and your own ideas about group work and leaving no one behind. So, Linda.
Hello, how are you? I'm Linda. I'm Linda Duca. I'm originally from Argentina, but I'm work and live in Spain. Right now I'm working at Universidad de Comillas, but most of my research is at Universidad Complutense of Madrid. So with this picture of my students doing group work, I would like to introduce with what brought me here. I think groups and social work with groups, it's a great opportunity to address individual needs and at the same time have the focus on social justice and trying to reflect together that problems are generally shared and they're not individual things. So I cannot talk much about the reality of social work with groups in Argentina, but I can talk about the reality in Spain. And in Spain, there is social work groups training in mostly all the courses in the country, but in practice, something happens that this is not translated into actual practices. So social work practice is getting more individualized and we are lacking the group and community perspectives. So I think group work can give great opportunities to get together and share problems. And this is what we will try to find in these meetings, try to share problems and common challenges to see if we can address them together. And I guess the most important challenge is try to find a group work that is aligned with human rights and that has its roots in social justice perspectives and is not only focused on the individual well-being, but in the common one.
Thanks. Alexis, what a powerful photo that is.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Linda, for sharing. So there's definitely commonalities in the experience. And this photo I selected is one to represent humanity. So my name is Alexis Howard. I'm coming to you from New York City in the USA. I am currently working both on a local level in New York City's Public Child Welfare Agency, as well as on a national level with the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute. So as a practitioner, as well as a social work educator, my current group work practice and experience is supporting social work interns who are members of the workforce in the public child welfare system and supporting their connection to their own humanity so that they in turn we talk about, this parallel process in social work so that they can connect to the humanity of others in the community they serve. And you know, again, we often talk in social work education about culturally responsive practice. And in my opinion, in my experience, group work is it, as it is around being culturally responsive, because in the communities we serve, they are much more familiar with working in this mutual aid group way, as opposed to the individual ways that are much more Eurocentric in their approach. The group work experience for social work interns really provided a space that could cultivate, you know, a growth mindset. And again, this integrating themes of social justice and humanity, as this picture, hope you know, represents this coming together, collective humanity, and particularly during a time that was during COVID, where the instances of social injustice were much more evident for us in the communities that we serve and that were impacted by multiple systems. So I'm happy to be here today and engage in this conversation.
Thanks, Alexis. I'll go next. I believe this is a photo from the Melbourne International Joint Conference of the IASSW and IFSW and ICSD. And I picked it because I think it's something that I'm just yearning for. I mean, I love my colleagues on this video, but I also love being just really up close with people. And the joie de vivre, I'm not very good at French, but of the spirit of the people in the room and their diverse nature. Particularly, I'm so fond of Shirima in the blue dress right in the front. I think she says it all for all of us. But these groups, actually these special interest groups, of which we're trying our online version, have been around for quite a while. I'm sure date way back, but in a formal way, we've been doing them from 2004. And at the end of this PowerPoint, you'll see some more photos from here. But this is truly a privileged group. We all traveled in high carbon fashion to get to Melbourne. And in some cases, our universities paid the fare. In my case, I'm a professor at Adelphi University in New York City, in New York State, and I'm thrilled that they did that. Yet it is a privileged position. So the so many other photographs, probably more meaningful for the people who are in them, of vegetable sellers forming their own groups on the streets of Mumbai, and the people recovering from mental illness who have formed their own programs in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I mean, there are so many examples of these. So that's what really draws me into the work. And when I say yearning, truly yearning, we've all managed to live inside our boxes in Zoom, but it is time to really be both in solidarity, both physically, metaphorically, and in spirit. Thanks so much. Our last introducer, and we took her to the last one, is Roshni from Johannesburg. There you go.
Hello, everybody. Sanbonani, as we say in South Africa. My name is Roshni and my surname is Pillay. I work at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I'm really happy to be part of this group that is looking at really important and meaningful conversations around social justice, around climate change, and I think I would like to bring home what this means for people in South Africa specifically, by the title of a publication, which is called How to Do Social Distance in a Shack. And that basically shows, and a shack here is temporary accommodation. And South Africa has the unenviable position of being the most unequal space on Earth. And so therefore the inequalities and the difficulties that were exposed by COVID was definitely something that is important and was highlighted. So therefore, a conference of this nature is of such global importance because it discusses so many things, and the concept of not leaving anybody behind is critical in this process. South Africa has, or Africa has, a term called Ubuntu, which resonates very well with group work. And Ubuntu is a collection of values and practices that people of African origin view as making people authentically human. And I think that is what group work is about and what this conference is about, and how we as part of a wider collective can come together and address these issues. COVID-19 has been devastating. It has reduced families, we've had losses, we've had trauma. And I think when we come together in these spaces, we are able to highlight how we need to do things differently. And I think these conversations will allow us to do that. We'll look at where we are at and where we want to go to. So thank you.
Thank you so much. As you see, we're talking about these things. This is our overall agenda. Will be another 15 minutes or so. We believe that you'll be able to contact us in some way. We certainly hope so. So as we're speaking, consider, what are you thinking about? How can we be together in these kind of spaces as well as elsewhere? How can, from a very local level, people connect through groups? How can we deal with, you know, the suffering of isolation is formidable. I don't want to minimize, though, the suffering of families who have lost people and lost enormous amounts during the pandemic, during the violence that has been encompassing our world in the last couple of years, and obviously before. So again, groups are central. This is our mantra. And we do believe that group workers themselves really have time to talk together. So it's we had to pull together our own group to do this presentation just so we could have a conversation. But truthfully, we're open to hearing from you. Our final slide and our other things have ways to get in touch with us. So now we're going to enter into a little bit more of a free-form conversation on these issues that we're facing in group work opportunities and challenges. Who would like to begin that part? Linda, you're looking to turn on your sound. I know you are.
Well, the thing is,
oh, this is the moment. This is the moment. Yeah.
Conciliation is really hard. So they say in Spain, conciliation are the parents. So, you know, I have my daughter with me because she's sick. She couldn't go to school. So I hope you can hear me. So I already talked about some issues we face in practice and education of group work, but maybe she's saying in Spanish why she's sick, so she understood what I said in English, I guess. So I think the most important thing for me is how to address social justice in group work. And this is a topic that might seem utopic, or something that is really hard to reach. but it's actually on the definition of social work.
Yes.
And it should guide how we proceed. But sometimes when I talk to professionals, or even in my personal practice, when I facilitate groups, this is something that is really hard to achieve. And if we, in the rush of the daily practice, or we forget that this is our goal and our focus. And I think international collaboration can help us see other perspectives and see how can people solve this and have more ideas to achieve this goal. I don't know if you would like to share something about that. I'm sorry about the Lara's.
She's doing great. She's a trooper, as they say. So Roshni, Alexis, which one of you would like to talk next?
I don't mind going next. So for me, I think group work has been a kind of process that allows for people to come together. And we've seen that during the pandemic, there's been really lots of spaces in which this focus on humanity has drawn us together, even though we were in so many different geographical regions. It's also made us more aware of the need to also focus on the unique aspects. When the pandemic started, it was just a cut and paste from Wuhan, China, where everybody said, let's just social distance, let's lock down. And I think the broader issues were not really considered. Because as we got more information about the pandemic, we realized that the pandemic affected people differently. It definitely affected older people, it affected many males, and it affected non-white persons. So understanding these kind of demographics, moving beyond just the pure science of it, has given opportunities to understand how we could come together and how we could act in ways that when we act as a group and as a collective, we can achieve more. And one highlight for me has been a group that I ran with another colleague in Namibia, Namunga, who is also a member of the International Association of Social Work with Groups. And what we found was that educators all over the world needed that kind of support. They needed that kind of coming together, sharing and talking, and considering the well-being of each other in this space. There are going to be more disasters that we will encounter as we move forward. And we need to develop a kind of resilient kind of pedagogy, a resilient kind of process, so that groups can flourish in this kind of society. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roshni. It really, Alexis, can I jump in for a minute? There's so many things that Roshni talked about that really resonated with me. I mean, you're absolutely right. This was not a single blanket that descended over us, right? There were so many differences in how the pandemic both influenced each community and small micro communities, and also how much it laid bare of the inequalities and injustices in our society. So for me, it was a time of intense, too much to look about, too much to think about, because it's all there. And also, to some extent, the lack of close human connection too, compounds that kind of problem. I know in my university, we had students stranded from China, from many other countries in the dormitories. And like many group workers, I don't think I'm so special in this way, that the way to deal with that kind of just overall feeling of despair about the world and about scared about our own situations is to do something. So in my university, I helped organize students in social work to work on convening groups with other students left on campus, for example, and different language groups and so on. Really taking the mutual aid model, both with and without facilitators. I know it has two meanings in that kind of way, but really activating the mutual aid that we all were in fact yearning to give. And so I know when Roshini was when you're talking about the groups of educators, it's very much that kind of thing. And for our students to be able to give a part of themselves and get so much by convening groups and also working together as a team, it was just a huge thing. And I think it was a time for us to refocus on social justice in that kind of way. Alexis, I held you off too long. Please, why don't you contribute?
It's okay, because I'll just add on, because actually when Rajni was speaking, I was thinking that here I was part of an online group that was hosted by the International Association for Social Work with Groups as a mutual aid. It started, and the way it evolved was really so beneficial. It was tuning into the self-care needs of those of us that are practitioners and educators. And I see that as a real opportunity. So that was one of two groups that actually I was a member of during COVID. So when I look at the theme of this conference about leaving no one behind, thinking about the opportunities for us as healers, as practitioners, to also be engaged as group members, that was a real opportunity. So I was also a member of a group of other Black women who were mothers. And that group emerged after there had been, national attention to the tragic killing of Black men predominantly, and community violence. And so we came together, all of us were social work educators. So again, there was an opportunity, in my experience, for those of us who were usually on the front line also to focus on our own self-care at a time when, I think to Rajni's point, there were communities that were impacted for, decades, intergenerational poverty and other social ills. They already knew about health and social disparities. COVID sort of illuminated that for the dominant culture of what these communities knew and were suffering all along. So I think when I think about the opportunity for me to be a member of a group, and how that experience helped to support my wellness, that was something very positive that came out of these times, of COVID.
Yeah. It certainly did make it possible to reach, of course, borders. And we're grateful that at least the four of us and the people at this conference have access to the resources that enable them to be part of this internationally. The International Association for Social Work with Groups will have its third completely virtual conference this year. And we miss being together physically, for sure. However, that is, as I mentioned earlier, a privileged position to be able to travel. And now we have people from so many additional places in the world who can make the investment of joining us online and fully participating, yet not having to travel and so on. And we're hoping that we continue to keep that in mind, to sustain those kind of connections, rather than, this is not a silver lining conversation. It's important to find goodness through sadness, that's for sure. But I do think there are some takeaways and also some skill sets that many of us have achieved during the pandemic that will sustain us in international collaboration. Does that make sense? Rashina, you're shaking your head. Roshni, I'm so sorry. I've become adjusted to the new pronunciation, but not 100% yet. New for me, not new for you. I apologize.
That's absolutely fine. Yeah, I think it's true. There's been so many learnings that we have to not let go of. The way we teach online has changed significantly. How technology can bring people together, how technology can assist people in marginalized communities come together. I think those are areas that we need to look at and look at how we can harness it for social good, as opposed to having these new ways of doing things, but also being very careful of the ethics that can sometimes destroy processes as well, and how this technology is being used not as a big brother spying in, but rather to look at how it could work for the greater good, to look at how people in more disadvantaged situations can come together. We've seen it in India, we've seen it in various countries where technology has been a force for good in terms of bringing women together. The whole aspect that Alexis spoke about in terms of Black Lives Matter. One needs to find new and more creative strategies that can actually assist. We saw that during COVID, there were groups of people doing yoga together, groups of people coming together even in the online spaces. And I think that is an area that we can actually look at going forward.
Yeah. Anyone else, any further thoughts on this?
Well, I do think, I mean, there's no doubt that we missed, that there were wonderful opportunities and that we missed being together. You know, we're squares in trying to create a circle. And I think what stood out for me was the disparity around access to technology that is having some students who didn't have here in America, you know, internet access that you have to pay for. So the complications of that, or if people are living in doubling up, you know, families because of lack of affordable housing were doubling up. And so someone may not have the luxury of a room and may have to take, you know, class or be engaged in a corner in a bathroom, right? And so that, you know, us being together in this kind of way brought out those disparities for many. And so I think for me, I am looking forward to when the International Association for Social Work with Groups joins again together, because my senses come alive. I miss the sight, the smell, the touch of being with others.
And I would also like to add that during the pandemics, this sense of community and group work and group increased, but at the same time, now there are many consequences in the daily life that are not really associated with COVID, but there are consequences. I don't know, the increasement of depression or the huge increasement of suicides and attempts, and addressing those problems in an individual way. When those problems happened in a community and group work, is something that does not have to do with it's not an approach that is appropriate to them. So I guess group work has an opportunity to bring back this togetherness sense, and going back to face-to-face group is really what Alexis says, coming back into senses. But at the same time, we need to remember that some people may be lonely or too far from others and can find these feelings in an online methodology. So those are both things that should be considered. And I guess every case is different and every situation is different. And we need to address that in a different way. And I think that all these reflections can help us professionals and educators to find alternatives that really think about the people and from the people, that they are not something that is chosen, but the highest fears or something.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to move on to our next slide with some wrap up, I think. Don't you think, guys? So we asked ourselves, how do we summarize this and next steps going forward, and how can we identify possible venues for continuing? So let me just take the second question first. This is a funny period of time for us in group work, in that we don't have like 5 different conferences to recommend and and programs to participate in. I think we really are hoping that those people that are viewing the video will get in touch with us and share venues for sharing this kind of thing. By the time this is available, this video, the 2022 ISWG conference will have taken place, and we are hoping to have it in person, actually in Europe next year, in Lithuania, things go well, as they've been planning for the past 3 years to have it. So, but really, please do share. But rather to sort of end on this, how do you think, my dear colleagues, how can we summarize the kinds of things we've been talking about with words going forward?
Well, I think we can summarize what we said with the first slide we had. That is how we can bring social justice into group work again. How are we going to address all the problems that are global, like natural disasters and virus and all that stuff? And how are we going to include the online settings in our practice? And then at the same time, how we can connect internationally. And on that last point, I will say that the International Association of Social Work with Groups provides a great space for connection and sharing. And it's a place where I've learned almost everything I know about group work. And it also gave me great friends. And now, for example, to give an example, now they have a place to talk about the new standards of online group work. And the committee has people from many parts of the world that are educators, professionals. And I think they also have a mutual aid group on how to teach online. So it's a place to connect, to share. So you can contact us if you are interested, or you can go to a website and see everything. And I wish we can get new people from this conference.
And I should add that you do not have to be a social worker to join the IASWG, even though it has social work with groups in the name. Roshni, Alexis, I'm going to close the door because someone is mowing the lawn next door. But I'll be listening. Alexis?
I'll just add on, just to echo what Linda shared about the great relationships that we have fostered through the association. And I think, as you all can see, we represent the global experiences of group work practice in this square, this one-page square. There were commonalities about our experiences, both as group work facilitators and practitioners and educators, as you heard, despite coming from very, very different places on the map, we all shared commonalities. So I think that in itself is special. We also talked similarly about opportunities that we thought were available across the globe, relationship building in group, developing and cultivating mutual aid through groups. And we talked about being members of a group. So to me, there were many commonalities, although we are coming to you from very different places.
Thanks, Alexis. I just want to echo what everybody said, that groups are amazing. There's diversity in groups, there's interdisciplinary collaboration. And I think if we want to make a difference in terms of social justice, in terms of a more peaceful and cohesive world, then we need to be working together in groups, because we start with our primary group as people within families, and we move beyond those groups to people in the world. And I think that this conference and this process definitely shows us that together we can be stronger and we can achieve more. Thanks.
Want to. Hey, beautiful. Thank you so much. We did want to share with you a little bit more about the history, but you can read this. We're not gonna go through all of this, but as we're closing out, I do think it's terribly important for you to, you can go to www.iaswg.org, find out more information on all of us, as well as all the organizational activities. But also there are many international groups, and of course your local groups. It's really important that we all be interested in group work. And in fact, you yourself, people who are listening, can be the idea entrepreneur. I know that sounds a little odd, but the person who is out there opening the window, stepping through and bringing group work into people's practice and into the world. We have so many different dimensions to group work. And I can certainly say that those of us who teach, who consider ourselves group work, that is our practice, as well as outside, but really so many ways, so many links with community development, community organization, as well as with therapeutic and clinical services. So we encourage you to do that. So here are some photos. We started in 2004. That was a red letter day. So we have lots of them. Lara's here to watch the video show. I love it. Again, are there ways that we can work together? Remembering that. A couple more photos of us together. You can see all over the world. And here was that picture that I mentioned. I think this was our first one together, I think. And our most recent Everyone All Together, we had two special interest groups in Dublin. And last year we also did a virtual one. So here's some more information immediately, and here are our contact information. I do want to close that for years, many of us have been involved in international activities. You've already heard about our teaching mutual aid groups and practice groups and so on. With many of my colleagues, we've studied the common elements of group work. And really it comes down to two very simple things: being together and doing together. Being in a virtual space, but having a sense of being together. Being together, we might all be meditating individually, but we're together doing something. It could be talking, it could be singing, and it could be swimming. But having that consciousness that we are all in this thing together, and that we can in fact make a difference, both for ourselves and for the world around us. So please join us. Should we hear a farewell from everybody? Can we do that?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, contact us.
Till next time.
Okie dokie. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.